Hi, hello, welcome to Spell Day. We're covering spell every single day of the year from the 5e PHB plus 3. Those specialty spells are homebrew spells. We're at +1 at the moment. You can head back in the playlist to find it. And today's spell is Plant Growth.
Let's grow, girls.
Third level transmutation, casting time of 1 action or 8 hours. Range of 150 feet, components verbal, somatic, duration instantaneous. This spell channels vitality into plants within a specific area. There are 2 possible uses for the spell, granting either immediate or long-term benefits. If you cast this spell using 1 action, choose a point within range. All normal plants in a 100-foot radius centered on that point become thick and overgrown. A creature moving through the area must spend 4 feet of movement for every 1 foot it moves. You can exclude 1 or more areas of any size within the spell's area from being affected. If you cast this spell over 8 hours, you enrich the land. All plants in a half-mile radius centered on a point within range become enriched for 1 year. The plants yield twice the normal amount of food when harvested. Druids, man. Druids. This is interesting. We have a spell with 2 different casting times. Don't remember that. And only 3rd level for the things this does. Because the first feature I had partially remembered, I remembered wrong. And the second feature I remembered. Oh boy, the second feature I remembered. So with the first feature, which has the least world building implications, but still world building implications, I thought it was just difficult terrain. 400-foot radius around. Not quite. It's actually a lot worse than difficult terrain. So certain things can avoid difficult terrain. There's certain spells that can avoid difficult terrain, you know, freedom of movement and such. But when it comes to this isn't difficult terrain. It's just telling you how much movement it takes to move through, which is more than difficult terrain consumes. And also now abilities that can ignore difficult terrain no longer ignore it. Not necessarily no longer ignore it, they just don't ignore this feature. 4 feet for every 1 foot moved. Yikes. And that's also not just walking. Here we go, because I thought this was also just the ground, like a circle or square on the ground. It doesn't say sphere, but it does just say radius, on a point centered on a point within range, not a point on the ground, just a point. Meaning, let's say you're in a jungle or in a forest. It's not just the grass, which is what I thought it was previously. No. It's the trees, the branches, the thickets, the bamboo, the bushes, the brushes, the vines, everything becomes dense to the point of every 1 foot of movement. It takes 4 feet of movement, speed-wise, for flying, walking, and also swimming if you're underwater and there's coral and seaweed. Does coral count as a plant? Counts as a plant, right? Doesn't affect magical plants, though. That's an interesting one. It says all normal plants. So monstrous and magical would likely be excluded. Also, I thought this only lasted an hour, or a minute. I think it only lasted a minute. No, it doesn't. This is permanent. Until it's cut down, chopped down. That is a really dense area, which you can exclude and shape any space within that when you cast it. Not again over the same terrain, but you get to exclude where it's overgrown. So again, the Druid situation, you can make an extremely dense territory and then pathways, or certain pockets, or ambush sites, or traps. You could have woods that are extremely dense around the sides of it, or around the edges, and then when you get into the interior or certain safe spots, it's entirely fine. It's normal. It looks like a cursed bramble and spikes and grass everywhere, but no, it's fine. Also, the implications of overgrown, because it doesn't list any effects, but let's say you cast this on poisonous vines. Depending on how the DM's ruling it, because it doesn't say it goes away. It's just permanently growing all this in an extremely fast pace, to the point that 4 feet of movement only covers 1 foot. So let's say, again, poisonous or spikes or anything overgrown or stereotypical haunted or evil woods sort of thing. Dead trees with sharp brambles, thorns everywhere. Cast this, all that gets overgrown as well. So even though this doesn't have any listed damage, you could get the equivalent of spike growth. If your DM was ruling it that way. Or DM's world building wise or setting up an encounter, that's something to take into account and possibly set up. But no, that's fantastic. That explains so many dense and dangerous woodland areas. And because it doesn't provide cover, which I mean, realistically it should, or at least obscuring sight, because that is so many plants, I guess that's not listed because it's similar to the damage thing. You can't tell what plants this is actually affecting, so the one thing it can guarantee is it's slowing the enemy down. This also isn't something dispelled. That's just grown like that now. It can still grow. But okay, on to the other feature. The 8-hour version, where all plants within a half-mile radius and on a point within centered on a point within range are enriched for 1 year, providing twice the amount of food when harvested. Does that guarantee that? Does it just give them the ability to produce twice, or does it guarantee that they produce twice? To the point that, and does it guarantee it through a detriment? Like, if a drought hits, is it still going to be revitalized because the spell was cast? Because also, I mean, listen, the Industrial Revolution and farming techniques were massive for populations. The effect that had on real life of increasing the efficiency of farms was huge. You have a spell, a 3rd level spell with 1 casting. Yes, it takes 8 hours, but 1 casting, you get multiple of these a day to cover a half-mile radius to guarantee twice the amount of a harvest. If you have an actually efficient farmer or using other spells to help that with irrigation and other techniques and other mundane techniques, the populations you could have, the things you could do with this, God, the implications. I mean, they're quite standard. It's, you can feed a lot more people, but the amount of people, you can also have less farmers. That's the same reason with the Industrial Revolution and farming techniques, is you could have more specialists. If less people are concerned with actually doing the growing, you can have people focused on technological development, magical development, development of the arts, development of other things, really religious, theology. It's a fantasy setting, go wild! I mean, any glance through history, food is a big thing. The fact that you can double it, and in the best case, guarantee it's doubled, even through hardship. We could almost ignore the other half of it. To be fair, the part that's mostly used for beneficial to an adventurer is the first part, and that's also useful for NPCs. The second, guaranteed an NPC spell. Yes, a player could use it, but oh my god! Twice the amount of food. Oh, 3rd level. Wow. Put this on a magic item or some kind of automation or just, oh man. Twice the amount of food. That is huge. That is huge. That's huge. You can have so many large populations. Though, if your population's relying on the fact your crops are magically enhanced the moment you don't have the aid of that spellcaster, well, you have half as much food in that case. A lesson relying on magic. The people who can cast it or the people that can make magic items, it's setting dependent, but power's power. Whether it's just setting someone on fire immediately or controlling the food source, as in doubling it. Honestly surprised with this one, but 8 out of 10. Trust me, the second half of that and the world building implications and the stuff you can do world building wise with that spell existing is putting a lot of weight on that number. Because adventuring wise, yeah, you can use, I mean, it's really nice to have enemies slow to that degree over a 100-foot radius and still make a path for you. But you still have to have plants around to rely on it, so in a town that's not useful. But you can use it to fortify regions, and it stays there for permanently. It's 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10.